It's me. I'm going to read a clean joke and then a dirty joke, and read an Anne Sexton poem, and then I'm going to read from Obligated Whisper. That's the goal, is to get people exposed to my book that I released last June or July, was it, of 2023. And I've got my little stylophone here. It's my inexpensive battery operated synthesizer that apparently David Bowie used in one of his early songs. Let's get to it. Let's just start with a joke. Let's see if the clean jokes are funnier than the tasteless jokes, okay? We'll do an experiment here. Let's just randomly pick a great clean joke. The owner of a large factory decided to make a surprise visit and check up on his staff. As he walked through the plant, I gotta check these off in case I use this on a regular basis, so I don't do the same ones. As he walked through the plant, he noticed a young man doing nothing but leaning against the wall. He walked up to the young man and he said angrily, "How much do you make a week?" $300, replied the young man. Taking out his wallet, the owner counted out $300, shoved it into the young man's hands, and said, "Here is a week's pay. Now get out and don't come back." Turning to one of the supervisors, the owner asked, "Just how long had that lazy kid been working here?" "He doesn't work here," said the supervisor. "He was just here delivering our pizzas." Okay, that was I don't know, was that funny? Now we will read a truly tasteless joke from volume 3. And we will, oh my God, I just saw the N word in here. Should we start with that one? It ain't me. It's this book, which was put out in, oh my God. No, we're not going to do that. Oh, no, we are not going to read that one. What the fuck? This isn't just tasteless, it's racist. This came out in 1983. Okay, I have to be selective on this one. Okay, they got them in categories: Italian, Polish, Helen Keller, dead babies. Okay, how about a Helen Keller one? Boy, the N-word just popped up right away. All right, how did Helen Keller's parents punish her? They put extra doorknobs on all the doors. Oh, God, okay. I think the clean joke won out on that. Forget that, okay? Oh, boy, we'll have to be careful with that one. Okay, Anne Sexton. We're going to read a poem from Anne Sexton's Complete Poems. It's got everything in here. You, Dr. Martin. You, Dr. Martin, walk from breakfast to madness. Late August, I speed through the antiseptic tunnel where the moving dead still talk of pushing their bones against the thrust of cure. And I am queen of this summer hotel, or the laughing bee on a stalk of death. We stand in broken lines and wait while they unlock the door and count us at the frozen gates of dinner. The shibboleth is spoken and we move to gravy in our smock of smiles. We chew in rows, our plates scratch and whine like chalk in school. There are no knives for cutting your throat. I make moccasins all morning. At first, my hands kept empty, unraveled for the lives they used to work. Now I learn to take them back, each angry finger that demands I mend what another will break tomorrow. Course, I love you. You lean above the plastic sky, god of our block, prince of all the foxes. The breaking crowns are new that Jack wore. Your third eye of wings that fall from the air, they wait each like a wooden decoy, or soft like a pigeon, or a sweet, snug duck. Until one moves that dart beak breaking over. It has the bread. The world is full of them, a world of beasts thrusting for one rock. Just 4 scoop out of the bread and go swinging over Gloucester to the top of the sky. Oh, see how they cushion their fishy bellies with a brother's crumb. And I actually read the second half of another poem by her. So, okay, we're going to back up. I think no, we're going to leave that. Okay. Let me start over. I actually was reading the second half of a poem that was, I accidentally turned 2 pages. Oh, geez, Louise. Okay, well, we need to go back to the stylophone. We are going to start over. It's the only way I can. Okay, I got one person who just gave me a thumbs up. Oh no, good one. Okay, if I didn't have any viewers, okay, let me pick up where I left off. Your third eye, and then I went to. Oh, see the naughty. Oh my God, the wings that fall. Of wings that fall from the air, they wait like a wooden decoy. Okay. Of course I love you. You lean above the plastic sky, god of our block, prince of all the foxes. The breaking crowns are new that Jack wore. Your third eye, turn the page correctly, moves among us and lights the separate boxes where we sleep or cry. I think she's talking about a mental institution. I'm not positive. What large children we are here. All over I grow most tall in the best ward. Your business is people. You call at the madhouse, an oracular eye in our nest. Out in the hall, the intercom pages you. You twist in the pull of the foxy children who fall like floods of life in frost. And we are magic talking to itself, noisy and alone. I am queen of all my sins forgotten. Am I still lost? Once I was beautiful. Now I am myself, counting this row and that row of moccasins, waiting on the silent shelf. Sorry I screwed that poem up. I hope it, if I didn't get somebody who commented, William Hall, hello, I would have started over and think that everything was, okay. All right, well, that's the way things are. In the land of imperfection. Anne Sexton, will read more from her in subsequent readings. And now, I got a lot of poetry books, so we'll keep a wonderful variety going. But now I want to read from my novel, Obligated Whisper, which can be found at gulleroodbooks.com. Or just go to amazon.com, go to books, and type in my name, and you'll find it. This is the hardcover, and it's on lulu.com. It's 700 and how many pages? Roughly 723 pages. And it had so many pages I couldn't produce it on Amazon. Amazon can only do, I don't know, 600 or something, 500 something for hardcovers, but they were able to make the paperback. So I had to go to Lulu to make the hardcover. And it's fully illustrated, lots of drawings and paintings inside this thing. And I'm going to put the and sign on. There we go. The color of the lights of the and. Okay? So that anybody who comes back to these broadcasts later, when they see the and lit up in the background, they'll know that's when I started to read from Obligated Whisper, because I plan to read as much of it as I can to try to get people interested in getting the book. Again, it's on Amazon. And thanks, William, for saying hello. I will read first by Captain Paul Watson of Sea Shepherd and of Greenpeace fame, the foreword that he kindly wrote for this book. Foreword, the little people. We crossed the storm-tossed Gulf of Alaska in November of 1971, heading for the remote island of Amchitka, a place being prepared for a very nasty ecological crime. A shaft 6,000 feet deep had been drilled beneath the island. A full-size Spartan missile with a 5-megaton warhead had been lowered to the bottom of the shaft. This monstrously insane project was called Project Kaneken. Kaneken is simply the Dutch word for can, a lethal can of explosive radioactive poison that posed a significant risk. A risk described by Dr. Frank Press of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology as a, quote, small possibility of very large damage balanced against national security needs. Our purpose was to put our ship in the danger zone, to place our lives on the line in protest of this insanity. As our small vessel, the Greenpeace II, plowed through heavy seas, battling hurricane-force winds, the decision was made by the U.S. president to push the scheduled date back a few days. We were some 500 miles and 2 days away when the daunting fires of hell were unleashed a mile beneath the island. Daunting fires, that should be. The Atomic Energy Commission had declared the test as safe, yet lakes and vegetation were tossed into the air. Cliffs fell into the sea as enormous ground waves rippled through the island, sending shock waves into the ocean, killing thousands of otters, seals, and seabirds, all expendable in the quest by Richard Nixon to flex his nuclear muscles. In the mind of the anthropocentric human being, such lives are expendable. And it is this inability to understand that all species are interdependent and important that has led to what I call the insanity of humanity. In 1973, I served with the American Indian Movement during the siege of Wounded Knee, where under the orders of President Richard Nixon, 46 people were shot and wounded, and 2 men died. With a number of armed federal officers surrounding the village, we had no hope of winning the day, and I said so to AIM leader Russell Means. He smiled and said, "I know. So why, I asked, do we continue to hold out? The odds are overwhelmingly against us. We cannot win. Russell softly replied, we are not concerned about the odds against us. We are not concerned about winning or losing. We are here because it is the right place to be, the right time to be here, and the right thing to do. Every day we hold out sends a message of defiance and screams out that we are here. We have not gone away. We need not worry about the future. We simply need to focus on our actions in the present, because what we do in the present defines the future, and it is in the present where our power lies. Those words have guided me along the path of life for 50 years, and along that path, I have discovered that there are more realities lying outside of the narrow perceptions of our anthropocentric minds, mysteries we are unaware of because we have conditioned ourselves to remain ignorant of such things. The language of whales, the perceptions of wolves and eagles, the interconnection of all living things, and the threads of commonality that connect us all. These things are alien and abstract to most of humanity. It is through the artistic, mystic magic of myth weavers that the veils and shrouds that we place over truth and beauty are cast aside, and we're able to glimpse that there is more, much more, about the world that we don't understand, that we don't feel, nor are we part of. We have locked ourselves into our alienation and our suffering, and it is our pleasures and narrowed perceptions that are the shackles that keep us bound. Hidden within the spirit of the myths, the stories, the legends, and the sagas lie hints and truisms about the nature of our collective reality. Are there little people sharing this planet with us? The answer is yes, because I have seen them. Sometimes they're adorned with feathers, sometimes in scales, fur, bark, or shell. They are the souls of what we consider to be the others, the expendables, the unimportant, self-aware, sentient beings that we have dismissed in both our collective arrogance and our ignorance. To me, that is what this story is all about. The lost connections, the need to revitalize these lost connections, casting off the anthropocentric values and the embracing of biocentric realities. That is why I established the Church of Biocentrism, not as a religion, but as an alternative means of perception, a means to learn from indigenous biocentric human cultures and from indigenous biocentric non-human cultures. Ifs, elves, and fairies, menhu and leprechauns, hobbits, and just little people are the creatures that connect us to the sentience in the sea, in the air, under the soil, and in the trees, this vast global network of intelligence that form nations outside of the boundaries of our restricted conscience. My guidance over the years has come from the cetacean nation, when a dying sperm whale saved my life. It was 1975, and I was first mate on the Greenpeace 5 off the coast of Northern California. Our plan was to obstruct the Russian whaling fleet, and the idea was to place our bodies between the whales and the harpoons. And there we were, in a small, inflatable boat behind a pod of 8 magnificent sperm whales. Behind us, a Soviet harpoon vessel was on our tail, moving through the sea at over 20 knots. Each time the harpooner tried to take a shot, I would maneuver our small boat to block him, and for 20 minutes, we prevented him from firing. Despite this, the whales could not escape. They were unable to dive because they had no time to take in enough air for a descent, and they were clearly fatigued. I heard yelling, and I turned to see the Soviet captain running forward on the catwalk. He approached the harpooner, crouching behind his gun, and screamed into his ear. The captain then stood up, smiled as he looked down on us, and slashed his index finger across his throat. The harpoon cannon roared. Our harpoon flew over the heads, and our heads, and the cable slashed the water beside us as it struck. Horrified, we saw the harpoon slam into the backside of a female whale in the pod. She screamed, rolling onto her side, scarlet blood fountaining into the salty air. Suddenly, the largest whale in the pod thunderously slapped the water with his tail and dove. He turned and swam directly under us, and with a roar hurled himself from the surface of the sea towards the harpooner on the bow. The Soviet harpooner was ready. He had loaded an unattached harpoon into the cannon, and as the whale rose out of the water, the gun spat that lethal arrow point blank into the head of the whale, and he screamed and fell back into the sea. We sat there shocked and angry in our tiny boat, dwarfed both by whaling ship and whale, as the catchlet rolled in agony on the surface, a scarlet stain spreading rapidly outward from his body. And then it happened. I saw the eye of the catchlet. He saw me. He dove, and I watched as a trail of bloody bubbles approached us rapidly until his head rose high out of the water, towering over us at an angle so that he merely had to drop upon us to crush us. As he rose from the water, a shower of brine and blood rained down upon us. His head rose above us so close I could have encircled one of his teeth in his lower jaw with my fingers. I saw my reflection in his eye, and I caught a glimmer of understanding. I felt that the whale sensed what we had tried to do. Instead of falling forward, the dying whale forced himself back as he began to sink into the sea. I saw his eye slip beneath the surface, still looking straight at me, until it disappeared into the darkening depths, and he was gone. The sun was low on the western horizon. The light was getting dim, and our little boat bobbed in the sea like an insignificant cork surrounded by the entire Russian whaling fleet. I was in shock, horrified, angry, sad, and also relieved that I was still alive. That whale could easily have killed us, but chose not to do so, and I realized that I was in debt to that amazing being for sparing my life. But it was more than that. As the sun sank and the lights of the fleet began to sparkle over the gray water, I asked myself, why? Why were the Russians killing these magnificent, beautiful, intelligent, self-aware, socially complex, sentient beings? No one hunted the catchlet for food. They were killed for the highly prized spermaceti and sperm oil in their bodies. Why? Because it is an oil with high heat resistant properties, and one of the most valued uses was for lubricating intense heat producing machinery. And one of those purposes was to provide the lubrication for intercontinental ballistic missiles, otherwise known as ICBMs. These wonderful beings were being killed for the purpose of manufacturing weapons meant for the mass extermination of human beings. That was the moment my entire perspective shifted with the realization that the human species, my species, was clearly and murderously insane. From that moment on, I said to myself that I would do everything I could to save whales, dolphins, and other species in the sea. I was done with the crazy concerns of humanity, with the politics, religion, economics, and trivialities of hominid primates. To the whalers, whales were just oil. There's little understanding of just what they are, how they provide the nutrients to the phytoplankton in their feces, allowing these tiny and essential sea plants to produce the oxygen in the air we breathe and to sequester enormous amounts of carbon. It was that realization that brought me to the revelation that without whales, there'd be a dangerous diminishment of phytoplankton. And without phytoplankton, life as we know it could not exist. Since 1950, the year I was born, phytoplankton populations worldwide have been diminished by 40%. Without phytoplankton, the sea dies. And when the oceans die, so do we all. We see this story told on many levels in films like Avatar and in books like Obligate Whisper. Our salvation as a species depends on the diversity and interdependence of all life and the necessary realization that we are not superior to all the other multitudes of species that share the wonder and the beauty of our planet. It is the power of imagination driven by love and passion that unites us all. We just need the courage to let go of our collective conceit and to embrace the wondrous diversity and equality of living beings. In the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, Coleridge tells us that our imagination can overcome all challenges. To survive, the mariner realizes that he must see things differently than what he has been conditioned to see. Oh, happy living things, no tongue their beauty might declare. A spring of love gushed from the heart, and I blessed them unaware. The answer to an impossible problem is to find the impossible solution. It is through the exercise of passion, courage, and imagination that we can find impossible answers to impossible questions. In 1972, the very idea that Nelson Mandela would one day be the president of South Africa was unthinkable and therefore impossible. And yet, the impossible became possible. Securing the impossible involves visualizing the impossible and expressing this visualization through a diversity of artistic media. Obligated Whisper is a tapestry of fantasy, history, ecology, art, and social tensions packaged in a fascinating tale of intrigue and rebellion against daunting odds for survival. Paul Watson, co-founder of Greenpeace in 1972, founder of Sea Shepherd in 1977, and currently founder of the Captain Paul Watson Foundation in 2022. And I'm indebted to his support and writing of that beautiful introduction forward to my book. I will now read my writing, which describes the characters called Ifs and my bat characters. So it's the preface for Obligated Whisper, because I want to get as much of this book read as possible on my YouTube channel. I don't know what's the best color. Maybe red. Okay. Preface of Ifs. This is the skeletons of the Ifs. Long before man walked upright and lit tall fires to keep him warm in coldest winters and darkest nights, small pygmy-sized people were evolving at a much faster rate, especially in regions now known as the southwestern United States. Before the written word was, they were simply known as the Ifs. I-F-F-S is the spelling of those creatures. These humanoid creatures descended as an offshoot from an odd strain of early hominins. Adults rarely got taller than 3.5 feet, about up to an average adult Homo sapiens' knees. They were rather hairy and in those early times dark in color due to their constant exposure to the sun. When men from other lands began to settle in their regions, they would smoke the peace pipe with them. They were in perfect harmony with their brothers and sisters, who later became known as Native Americans, or often as Indians by the much later Europeans. Their faces were almost perfectly round, like small globes, and their eyes were as large and round as softballs. Most times they walked about naked, but as the climb gradually delved into a colder one during the Ice Age, they took to weaving soft cloths from plants, trees, and cacti. Upon their later residencies in the caves, however, most of the clothing were woven from sheep's wool, taken sorely from those sheep unfortunate enough to plummet to their deaths from unexpected cavern openings throughout New Mexico's desert lands. Their nostrils were hardly perceptible unless they sneezed or were upset or thrilled by something. Their ears, though sharp as dogs, were too barely visible. And If's eyes were as expressive and unique as any other part of their face, even more so than any humans, in fact. Some blinked quickly, like nervous parakeets, while others blinked slowly, revealing their second inner lids like owls in necklace turns, while still others, usually the elders, blinked with the ponderous velocity of a folding cloud in a stormless sky. Though little known, they were the artistic and mystical inspirations for countless petroglyphs, and even a few Hopi Kachina dolls described by stories told round campfires in much later years. No matter how aggressive some Native American tribes were, not one Indian ever attacked or killed these little people of the deserts and the mountains. To them, it would have been like killing a part of their own family. And a large part of this respect and honor was due to how very special these little people were to their hearts. For the Ifs, as they were still called, maintained deep connections to the spirit world. And so too, the indigenous peoples revered spirit. And on rare occasions, the spirits would act on all of their behalves. The connection through the Ifs were most profoundly felt by any one person who had the privileged opportunity to commune with them. They were a divine conduit to the many, many realms of the unseen. They were a tested and well-proven touchstone to the worlds of the unheard. It was as if the Great Spirit had caused the angels of the Christian and Jewish faiths vibrantly tangible, three-dimensional beings within the humble personhood of the Ifs. Not one of the 500 Indian nations who knew of them felt differently. They inspired not only poems, but the crux of philosophies and beliefs. Songs sprang from them. Many songs sang with many voices, but beaten with many more drums. Their thin, reptilian-like mouths were long and stretched from one end of their orb-like heads to the other. Their voices were sometimes deep as a baritone wildebeest strung with thick vocal cords, but usually they talked in higher-pitched whispers with soft, song-like tones. When someone or something made them happy, they purred loudly like that of a mountain puma. Upon the Europeans' arrival to the Northern Americas, the Ifs were treated like non-peoples or non-humans. The white man was afraid of them, and many thought them to be ghosts or even evil spirits or demons from the hell plains. Superstitions surrounding the Ifs abounded. They were often rounded up like calves in a rodeo and killed as sport. Men, women, children, until they were forced to quite literally retreat underground. Thousands upon thousands of Ifs quickly recognized and understood the white man a threat to their survival, as well as that of their Indian sisters and brothers. They fled and took to the caves and caverns from the present-day Virginias all the way to the New Mexico, Arizona, and California wildernesses. The harder the pale-faced ranchers and cowboys dug their spurs into the New World, the deeper into the earth the Ifs would live. Then it became the sad but too astringent days of what they called the Great Silence. The days when even the native tribes heard from them no more. From early British and Scandinavian pioneer days, chants from the Indian peoples were observed being offered to the Great Spirit in fading hopes for their return. In the rarest of events, a pure white buffalo was born, and festivals of praise, hope, and entreaty intensified these longings, mixed with the legend's message of unprecedented expectation. Prayers, ceremony, ethereal songs were offered for years until all native peoples finally gave up their faithful pursuits. The entreaties ceased. Remembrance became mere story. The occasional shaman or medicine man or woman might remember the strength of such stories from perhaps a great-grandparent, but even these mutated into blurry folk tales for the likes of children as the iron horses, the Industrial Revolution rushed onto the pristine and enchanted vistas of the now lonely American landscapes like a high tide on a weary, beaten shore. Slaves to the dark. When the Ifs first took to the deep caverns of the primarily Southwest, they rumbled and grumbled and moaned at their fate, much like the Israelites in the desert wilderness of some 8,000 years ago. It was during these times they observed the social construct of some of their neighbors, that of another species. Leaders or captains arose to calm and comfort the stricken and impoverished families. It is never necessary to let the effects of fear become absorbed into our hearts, Telemont, one of the first of such prophets, would say. For we are gifted as seers and hearers of what all other creatures on Mother Earth cannot see or hear. We do not feel the obligation to believe or hope in some unreachable sacred world. It kisses our faces every day in our thoughts and every night in our dreams. This magic, it's everywhere. Even in the deepest and darkest of caverns and tunnels. We know the world of the sacred exists even here, and perhaps mostly here. Belief and hope is a question. You do not need to question what is inside and outside you. It is. It is in its richness, its provision. We are, each one of us, alive because we see and hear every moment in every movement. They traded the beauty of the clouds and the stars for the sparkles and rainbow shimmers of their new cavern homes. Their sense of wonder never diminished, as the less their eyes saw, the more their inner worlds became stronger. And so they learned to live that way. They ate small lichen, which barely grew. They ate small snails, which barely moved. They ate blind shrimp-like fish, managing to barely survive in the primordial recessed worlds of these innumerous caverns, for the most part unexplored by humans. Once again, they had no enemies. And it wasn't very long before the bats replaced their aching desire. We have a bat back there. Right there. That's a long-eared bat. Wasn't long before the bats replaced their aching desire for the comradeship they so dearly missed from their tribal friends of the above. The origin of the bats. Before the Ifs, all the bats that ever existed, too, were at one time in history above-ground dwellers. Some still are today. But long ago, all bats slept in the trees, and instead of being nocturnal, they were at that time daylight creatures. They were friends with all species of birds, and their present-day dark, web-like wings were then graced with thick fur so that many of them looked like the flying foxes of today. Many looked like flying mice, squirrels, cats, and foxes. Today's flying foxes, though now nocturnal, were then fast asleep when the moon rose. No bats felt the need to take to the caves until after the catastrophic flood of the Great Silence. People of all ages made sport in killing them, partly due to superstitions about their webbed wings. Some said they were from the devil, but mostly due to their trusting of vulnerable natures. Instead of hanging from calcium salt-enriched stalactites and cave ceilings and walls, all bat species used to cling from the treetops as they ate, nursed, or napped in the afternoon sunshine. From the limbs, they could be seen swooping at flies, moths, mosquitoes, only to settle again on a favorite perch, usually upside down, as they do today. Small fruits, too, amongst the wildest of trees and shrubberies, were their main sources of nourishment. Humans of all sizes and ages saw these small flying mammals as child's play targets. They'd practice with their slings and arrows and for the occasional roast spit snack. So it became commonplace for one bat, then two, then several, then a squadron of 50, that soon enough became thousands with entire populations to head for the far recesses and underground sanctuaries of caves, caverns, and hidden fissures wherever they could be found in order to just escape these cruel, ruthless humans. Once they learn how to adapt with their capacity to navigate with highly evolved sonar gifts given to them by the Great Spirit, now honed to perfection, they thrived into the millions, and their subsequent numbers spread all across the planet. Many subspecies evolved into our present-day distinct varieties. Sadly, their kinship was gone with the birds, who were still of the daylight, and they now only communicated with their own kind. Their evolved, secretive, highly pitched, almost unrecognizable voices of Morse code-like languages served only the bats, no other. But this also kept them invisible to the white man and his intentions. They were imperceptible to all other kinds, except for one, the ifs. When the ifs descended, it was only a matter of time before the two species encountered one another. Since the ifs were so in touch with the evasive spirit world, it didn't take them too long to find a way to communicate with the now dark and webbed-winged flying neighbors. A comradeship was in the making. Friendships were forged between adults and children like no other in the history of interspecies bonds. Captains, as we've learned, were already part of the bat's social framework. And so when it became beneficial for the ifs to adopt this as an extension of their sociological structure, the bats were only too willing to offer their new companions advice and counsel. They helped the ifs get established in their new dark and chilly homes. They helped them to survive and escape from near extinction. The ifs in modern times. Within mere decades, the skin of the ifs, for some reason, became totally hairless, probably due to the lack of vitamin D and other nutrients from the sun. The pigment of their skin took on a shade of pale salmon pink due to the sudden, stark lack of sunshine. The pupils within their dark brown irises gradually expanded until they became perfectly permanent circles of ink-like pools that nearly encompassed their now almost absent white sclera. This was all due to the quick evolutionary processes that they'd adapt to within their new dark world. And like their bat neighbors with their sonar, they could now see things in the dark better than any feline, better than any subterranean fish fathoms below the Earth's surface, with only the scarcest of light. Their eyes remained large spheres, pitch black, shiny orbs, leading their directions for the remainder of their days. The ifs aged slowly. wrinkled little due to the minuscule exposure to the rays of the sun, and they often lived well past 400 years as an average lifespan. The elder ifs had thin, almost translucent skin. The blood vessels actually perceptible, coursing beneath. The absence of ultraviolet rays kept them youthful in appearance, no matter how old they were. In these latter years, they sported completely bald heads, and at a glance, humans might have thought them all but clones of one another. This is what they look like. It's on the cover. However, upon closer observations, it could be discerned there were subtle differences in mouth shapes, hairless brows, and eyes. Each if possessed unique facial expressions distinctly his or hers. And moreover, each were endowed with a kind of perfume-like scent, as different as one flower is a species to another flower. The vulnerability of the ifs, and the bats too, for that matter, were exposed in a myriad of respects. But the world was soon to learn such sensitivities would shake humankind in the most powerful, the most profound of quakes, within the most intense of manifestations. In a bittersweet way, these peoples would eventually show who the vulnerable ones actually were. That's the end of the preface. So I'll read chapter 1 next time. Thank you. Thank you. Now I gotta find the right button to, oh, there we go.